welcome back to the first ever Work Wednesday of 2022 and the first Remote Road Wednesday. It is the second time we're recording because there's so many issues today, starting with Faye's alarm clock and then my laptop, so, just a few things. But here we are with Faye today. How are you, Faye?
I am feeling wonderful, Sheen. How are you?
You're having a wonderful Saturday morning.
Wonderful Saturday morning. I had a lovely lie-in.
But it's been great. It's really nice to have you here. So Faye is a fourth year medical student. How is it, Faye? How is it being in the university? I've left this world now. How is it?
Hectic, a lot of pressure, but you know what? Thrive off it. Thrive off the pressure. Thrive off the busyness. So do you know what? It's not all bad.
Okay, that's good. And today we're here. So Faye is a part-time medical student, let's just say it, let's be honest. She's a full-time influencer. And today what we want to talk about is something very interesting. So at the moment, the trending news in the UK is Molly Mae, because COVID is not that important. We want
real issues.
Real problems. So we wanted to talk about this because Faye has mentioned this on her Instagram as well, and I've had little conversations here and there, and I thought it would be a very cool thing to discuss because I think it's a multi-layered problem. So just a quick recap. What we're talking about here is that Molly Mae, who was on Love Island, has been on the Diary of a CEO podcast with Drag London's Stephen Bartlett. And she made a statement there where she said that everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. And if you have ambitions, if you have something you want to work towards, you can work hard and get there, because that's what she did. And then this has been really, really dragged down everywhere. She was trending on Twitter. And this is what we're here to discuss. So before I tell you my opinion, what are your thoughts, Faye?
So again, I'm the same as you. I think it's very multifaceted, and I think I was saying off before we recorded this podcast to Sheen that I try to actively listen to things that I don't agree with, or like consume media from people who I don't agree with, to try to always constantly challenge my views. And I think it's such a risk to just fall down this hole of just one way thinking. So I do think it is multifaceted. On one hand, like, she's a woman, and as much as I think what she said is insensitive and it is wrong, she definitely has had more stick for it because she's a woman, because she's an influencer. I think people, because in this digital world of making money from social media is very misunderstood, and also like people hate influencers, and you know what, it's okay, because personally I don't begrudge people who hate influencers, because there's a lot of times that I am very grateful for the opportunities I do get because of my the work that I do on social media. And then also I think there's another aspect in that when we think of say like toxic productivity and stuff, I think almost it's just as toxic to believe that you can do nothing, do no work, and not have rewards. So I think, so on one hand. On the other hand, I feel like from the perspective of someone who worked in care for a year, which was like the hardest year of my life, hands down, and have seen, women who work 15-hour days, who do one of the hardest jobs in society, and they will never see the same rewards that Molly Mae sees. And from the perspective of someone who, again, is in NHS hospitals every single day, like, sees that side of it as well. And also another added facet is that when we hear statements like Molly's about you utilising your 24 hours in a day, I think it promotes this idea that unless you are using your 24 hours in a day to work towards financial goals, career goals, business goals, you are not utilising your time wisely. Mm-hmm. And I think this is toxic, because when I'm 90, am I really going to be looking back and going, thank God I spent that extra hour editing that video? Or am I going to think, thank God I went out for drinks with my friends, or went out for a meal or watched a film, or, you know, those are the memories that I'm going to look back on and go, yes, 10 out of 10. Love that.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've touched on pretty much everything, because there are so many things here, right? So the first one is the fact that influencers are just generally not very liked, and they're considered as, it's like easy success, easy life, easy money. So they can't really talk about working hard. So that's the one thing. Yeah. And then the second thing is the fact that, you know, Molly Mae is a woman, and sexism just creeps its way in everywhere. If like, so this is a conversation I've had, it's like, if it was another Love Island, let's say Ayal or something, who was a man and said the same thing, they might get the stick as well because they are an influencer, but they would not get as much stick as Molly Mae is getting because of the whole expectations that we have from women, and what they say is policed so much. This is another thing. And then the third thing is like, she's 22. I'm like, if I think about the things that I've said at 22, I'm just glad nobody was watching.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, you are very young and she hasn't seen a lot of life. And I think I saw one of the tweet, which was in her favor, which was like, yes, she has seen a lot of fame, but she hasn't seen a lot of life, and she's just still learning, still growing. We should be forgiving, right? It's not that what she said, we should forget what she said, but like, understand that she's only a 22-year-old girl and she's made a mistake, which she has apologized for publicly. So, you know, let's just leave it and move on.
It's really interesting that you brought up that, because when I made my Instagram reel kind of like touching on it, someone commented and they were like, I think it's really bad about all the hate she's getting, like it's disgusting, and think about like her mental health. And I replied to it and I was like, oh my gosh, completely. I was like, no one deserves hate in any way whatsoever. But I said, from her statement, I actually think there's been a lot of useful conversations around this topic, and actually a lot of awareness. And I'm sure like Molly has probably come away from this a lot more educated on, you know, people who've led a very different life to her. And I think I was saying to one of my friends, I think the best thing that ever happened to me was doing my gap year and working in care for a year, because I have a very normal background. I've got very average, incredibly average. And I came into medical school, which is a privileged position in itself. I'm surrounded by, the majority of my friends are very privileged. So I've been immersed in this privileged world. And I think unless I'd had that experience working in care, I think I could very easily slip down this hole of thinking that I was in this position because I'd just simply worked hard and not kind of like recognising the opportunities that I've had. And I think probably that's what's happened to Molly, is she just has been completely unaware. So anyway, coming back to my initial point, I think there's been a lot of useful conversations surrounding this. And I think that I think there's a very big difference between hating on someone and trolling someone, which people have been doing. They have been being horrible. Versus having really useful discussions and holding people accountable for what they say, especially when they've got such a big platform.
No, I agree 100%. And I think when it comes to privilege, again, you mentioned this in our first recording, that the whole thing about Grace Beverly, right? The fact that she's talked about all of her privileges and she's acknowledged all of them. Therefore, whatever she says, people are more willing to take what she's saying because she has acknowledged everything that she has going on for herself. And I think that was one of the issues with Molly, right? That she did not acknowledge her privileges, and the way that she just made a blanket statement, it just came across as really wrong in everyone's ear, especially when you think that, yes, we all have the same 24 hours, but what about, you know, people who have learning difficulties? What about people who have physical disabilities? And all of that you're not taking into account. And also, you know, people have different financial, what do you call it?
Circumstances.
There you go. And and some people have different, some people are having to work 3 jobs to make ends meet, right? So how can they find time to then make things happen for themselves? And it's that lack of awareness, this lack of, you know, looking at yourself and understanding that yes, you have worked hard, but you've worked
Mm.
hard on the opportunities that came your way that not necessarily everyone has access to. And I think this is something that we also need to, it's a constant reminder, right? Yes,
Yeah.
for example, for you, you're doing so well on YouTube and everything, right? But you're also aware, you talk a lot about the opportunities that you've had, where you come from, and how you've worked hard. So it's a mix of everything. And also it's that, again, something you've touched on is like the modesty, right? Understanding that it is not just you. It's like a lot of people have helped you to get there. And like if she said, oh, you know, obviously I have the same 24 hours, but also I'm grateful to everyone, like the Love Island crew and everyone who has helped me get to where I am today, then it would have gone down a little bit smoother, don't you think?
Yeah. No, you're completely right. I think I would say, obviously, we spoke about this on the other podcast, but I'm sorry, I'm just burped. The other recording, that like I just don't think anything bad can just come from being a bit more modest and a bit more humble, because maybe I have like a heightened awareness of this, because I guess when you probably feel the same when you see a number on the screen, like you see however many people view your stories, whatever, it's just a number. I think for me, I know the people that follow, there's a lot of people who follow my social media from like previous jobs that I've worked in the past, and I just think to myself, I'm like, how would they feel if I was flaunting stuff all on my social media? I think they would feel really crap, because they work so hard, and from them it probably does look like I'm living a very like easy life with a lot of rewards, and I just wouldn't want to make someone feel like that. And I think it's completely okay to feel good about your successes, and you should. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't be able to flaunt your successes and be proud of them. That's not what I'm saying, but I think there's something a lot more special and a lot more like personal in taking pride in your success and not having to share it, and just being satisfied in having that internal validation that you can, and knowledge that, yeah, well done, I've done this, but no one else, I don't feel the need to show that off to the world.
Do you want to share the story about your car?
My car, yeah. So basically, where this, yeah. So we did tell this story on the when we recorded it before, but I'll tell it again. So I said to Sheen, I said, please cut this out if this comes across wrong.
Yeah, she was very worried about this.
No, because I the reason is I'm going to talk about the hijab, and obviously I am completely aware this is a sacred religious, you know, gesture, practice, sacred religious practice, and I've taken a message, as someone who's not Muslim, I've taken a message away from that I will try to implement into my own life, and as someone who's not Muslim, I don't want it to come across badly. But basically, I was saying to Sheen that I come from North Wales, not in a very ethnically diverse place at all, but I'm a very open-minded person. You know, my parents have always brought me up to be accepting of everyone, and I moved it when I came down to uni. Two of the girls in my flat wore the hijab, and we had lots of conversations about, you know, religion, you know, the world, everything. And when they explained their reasoning for wearing the hijab, they spoke about modesty, and I kind of like this idea of just, this idea of modesty. And then I ended up watching a YouTube video again about modesty and hijab and all of this. And I had absolutely no idea why people wore the hijab. I just kind of saw it as like a religious practice. But when they explained this like reasoning to me, it really made a lot of sense. And I've tried to implement that in my own life in terms of being more modest, more humble, keeping things to myself, and just having that, keeping things to myself, and letting that be the kick that I get from it. I don't need other people to say to me, well done, Faye. I can just say to myself, like, well done, like you did that, without putting it in people's faces. So a very roundabout way. I'm taking my time with this story. In summer, I bought my dream car. I never thought I thought that I might be buying this car when I was middle age. I did not think I was going to be buying it at 23, and I bought it, and I made a conscious decision to not post the day that I bought it. I made a conscious decision to not post it on my social media. I posted it on my close friend's story actually, when I bought the car, but I didn't post it on my social media. And I kind of in my head I was like, oh, maybe I should do I'm so proud of myself, like I managed to buy this car at 23, or a YouTube video about it, or an Instagram post. But I decided against it. And my car is in vlogs, and my car is in like people. I haven't hidden it, but I just made that conscious decision to not make it make a post about it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you know what? There are a lot of medical students who probably follow me who might be grads, who are working a job to pay for their tuition fees, who or even not medical students, people who are trying to get into medicine. There's varied circumstances in people. The people who follow me have a very wide, I'm saying this all wrong. I don't know the circumstances of everyone who follows me, and I don't know how that if I posted about my car or whatever, how that's going to make them feel. So I just thought, you know what, I can be proud of myself, and that's enough.
Yeah.
And I was explaining to Sheen that there's times when I'm sitting in my car and I just have this moment where I'm like, I am so incredibly proud of you, Faye, like, well done. And I didn't need people to say, I didn't need people to know, and I still feel just as good about it. So yeah, but that's a very long-winded way of how I took a sacred religious gesture and took my own meaning from it and tried to implement it into my own life, basically.
I think it's a beautiful story, personally. I think it just shows, how you can not be exposed to different people and different religion and ethnicities, but it doesn't mean anything, right? As long as you're open to learning and you're accepting. And that's exactly what you did. Once you met them, you wanted to learn and understand why they do what they do, and you took your own lesson out of it, which has impacted your life in a very positive way. And I think that's 100%. Really, really powerful. Especially, I think we were talking about this earlier about, this whole thing of, if you're happy, if you're content, you feel successful, you don't seek the validation. So you don't need other people to tell you this. You are satisfied with knowing and having this like knowledge that, no, I've done it. And exactly like you said, you were sitting in your car being like, well done, Faye, I'm proud of you. It's like, this is so like such like self-empowerment that you will not get from, when we seek validation online and we just post stuff waiting for people to like it and people to tell you that, oh, well done on this. But this does not have that same, effect at the core where you genuinely believe that you've achieved this and you've done this. And I think this is a beautiful message of understanding where to draw the line when it comes to what is private and what is not private, and some of the things you need to keep for yourself. And it's, as you said, this is not about downplaying your achievements or anything. It's good if you're using it in order to help others, So if, for example, saying that you come from this background and you achieve this so others can do it, that's a different message. But for example, just saying that, oh, I bought a car, is not really helping anyone, especially as you said, there are different kind of people following you. So yeah, that's a very good shout. Okay, so we've discussed this about how to discuss your achievement. We've discussed the whole toxic productivity thing. As you said, yes, you might have the same 24 hours, but if you are always just hustling, you're not really enjoying. And I saw this thing on Instagram very recently, which really struck about, it's like we are constantly working towards the next thing without enjoying the fact that where we are at now is something we were working on a few years ago, and we're not enjoying or appreciating this. And I think this is me, definitely. Like, I was really working towards coming to Dubai, and now once I'm here, I'm like focusing on what happens next in the next few years. What shall I do? How do I make YouTube bigger, etc. And I am not enjoying the fact that I am here, and this is something I've been wanting for a while, something I've worked towards, and just taking a step back and really enjoying, especially as you said, you're not gonna think back in a few years, oh, I'm glad I spent that extra hour editing that video. No, you're gonna think about, oh, I'm glad I stayed up all night with my friend and we had such a fun time.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And yeah, so okay, we've touched on that as well. Now I have a question for you. The other main thing, obviously, with this whole Molly Mae saga is the influencer and her being a woman. So have you experienced this whole double standards when it comes to being a female influencer?
Absolutely. And I have a caveat before I get into it, is that I'm sure it's a phrase in, I'm so sorry, ignore my chip nails, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I'm sure it's a saying with the comedians say, is that always shoot up. So like it's a lot more accepted to take the mick out of people who are kind of like above you. That's really, so like you wouldn't take the mick out of someone who is in a situation worse off than you, if that makes sense. So take the mick out of people who are rich, privileged, etc. So I do think that people who, this is why I don't begrudge this hatred towards influencers that much, because I think in the grand scheme of things, there are a lot of rewards from influencing. Obviously, you're putting yourself out there, and there's. What did you say? Sorry.
They can take it.
Well, not even. It's like I think you're putting yourself out there, and there's a lot of trolling, and there are a lot of negative aspects to it. But also there are a lot of. It's relatively easier work. I say editing is hard. Learning how to master the algorithms, hard. However, is it comparable to say a heart surgeon or neurosurgeon or it's hard, but it's not. It is relatively easier.
Okay.
That being said, I think that there is definitely, I think because it's a newer concept, there is probably a lot of hatred towards influencing. And I was explaining on the other recording that I think when I was in school, I remember like all the teachers would always talk about, say, footballers, they make this much in a week, when we're teaching the next generation and we're making this much a week. And I think the hatred is kind of like directed towards, say, the footballers, but then this era is kind of directed to the influencers rather than the governments who are underpaying their employees. But then the other aspect to it is obviously, as a woman, I think she does receive more hatred as an influencer. I think people are prejudiced to the idea, towards the idea that because she's a woman, she's very like attention seeking. She wants the fame hungry or whatever. Whereas I think when men have social media personas, it's taken a lot more seriously. And I've definitely seen this myself. I think I've come to accept that I have negatively impacted my career by doing YouTube. I think I know that I will not be taken as seriously in the future as a doctor because I have a social media profile. Whereas you look at other medical influencers who, oh my God, use their platform for incredible ways. Like, for example, Dr. Alex, he has done so much good stuff with his social media profile and it has elevated his career. Whereas I have kind of accepted that it will hinder my career.
Yeah, that's such a shame, isn't it? It's the same with me. Like, if I'm with other consultants and stuff and they find out that I have YouTube and Instagram, and then they're always a bit confused as to why do you feel the need to do this now that you have a stable corporate job? Like, it's seen as either a route for people who don't have any other skills, so they can't do anything else, or it's seen as something that's very, like attention seeking, not something serious. And yes, so then you immediately see that they lose respect for you a little, and they think, I don't know what she wants from life,
Yeah.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
Well, I was going to say it's like the classic, if you're loud and outspoken as a man, it's seen as being like powerful and assertive, whereas if you're loud and outspoken as a woman, you're seen as being a bitch. Sorry, or if you're so like this kind of double standard. And then it's like if you're using your social media profile to promote your career as a man, it's seen as being like forward thinking and taking initiative and whatever. Whereas if you use your social media profile to like forward your career as a woman, it's seen as attention hungry and attention or like fame hungry. Yeah.
I mean, I can go on for ages on this, right? This whole thing about how women are perceived, especially in their career. So this whole thing about, as you said, you know, if someone is loud and outspoken and if you ask questions and stuff, you're seen as difficult and like you have an attitude and people don't really want to work with you. But then if a man has the same kind of behavior, then they are seen as, oh, they are so, they're going out there, they're trying to get it, they're really, this just boggles my mind, and it's so annoying, especially when you see it around you and you experience it. It's just terrible. And I think this is exactly what happened to Molly Mae. You're right. She looks the way she looks, she speaks the way she speaks, and she's a woman, and she had the audacity of saying that she's you know, successful and anyone can be. And I think that's what also grinds some people the wrong way. But I think it's just terrible, the whole double standards. And I think, yes, what Molly said was wrong. The way she said it was wrong. And it's good that we're calling her out and giving constructive feedback, keeping her accountable. But we should do it for everyone, not just her. And that's the
100%. I think that's why when I saw Stephen's tweet about it, I did see that perspective. I do. And I definitely do think she got a lot more stick for it because she's Molly Mae, because she's an influencer and because she's a woman.
Yeah.
But I also think as well, it's like these men that he has on his podcast, they are nowhere near as famous as Molly Mae. And like, maybe if they were as people, everyone in the UK, she's probably one of the biggest names in the UK right now. Every single thing she says is like, you know,
it's
scrutinized. Rightly so, because you know the messages that she promotes is filtering down to like the next generation. Like rightly so, she is held accountable. But yeah, I definitely do think it is so much more heightened because she's such a big name, and I don't necessarily think his thing that it's just because she's a woman. I think being a woman plays into it, but I don't think that's like the only factor.
Yeah, as we said, right, it's a multifaceted problem. It's not just one factor that led to this whole saga. And I think, as you said, you know, Molly Mae is so famous and it's important to keep her accountable. But for example, you know, the whole thing about the fact that she's the creative director for Pretty Little Things and the workers in the factories are getting paid less than living wage. So that was terrible. So everyone jumped on that bandwagon. But at the same time, Molly Mae is also talking about plastic surgery and how she's removed all of her fillers and stuff like that, and how she's teaching young girls to, you know, appreciate the way you look. All of these things are not real, and showing her journey from having a made-up face to not having a made-up face. But then this is not given as much attention. So when she's doing something good, this is not highlighted as much as soon as she has a minor slip-up. And I think that's also a toxic culture where we are intimidating people from saying anything, because if this is something good, no one cares. If this is something bad, then everybody cares.
No, definitely.
But so there we go. We've touched upon the Molly Mae saga twice now. Thank you so much for being here, Faye. I hope this was fun. I had a lot of fun. We finally met, which is great.
Yay!
And yes, when I'm back in the UK, we should definitely hang out in person. And I look forward to seeing more. Also, I have to say, I absolutely love your self-esteem, Yuri. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
It's such a mouthful, but I loved it. It was such a good idea.
Honestly, Sheen, I wish it had a catchier name, but I was lying in bed and I was like, because again, it comes back to this idea of internal validation that we were talking about before, and it's I will openly say, coming out of like my long-term relationship and whatever, I relied a lot on external validation. I relied on academic validation when I was a child. As soon as I hit puberty, I relied on male validation. And then only now, like coming out of this relationship, I've had to really build up this like internal validation. And I was lying in bed and I was like, Faye, like you've come so far. And then I just had this idea and I was like, do you know what, for the whole month of January, I'm just going to post like things that I've done to kind of like build up like my own internal validation. And then I was just, it was so last minute, Sheen, and I could not think of a better name. So Self-Esteem Ueri is a shockingly uncatchy name, but I've found it so therapeutic, and I'm absolutely, and loving it, and the comments are like the most wholesome thing in the entire world. So yeah, but it's nice. I'm happy that you're enjoying it as well.
Yeah, I love it. I think it was a great idea, and it's so like actionable, which is great, right? You're actually giving tips and not just giving like a overall fluff kind of thing. Yeah, so that's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, well done, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yay!
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.